The observation deck of the Galactic Confederation's Central Station was a marvel of interstellar engineering. Crystalline walls stretched hundreds of meters high, offering a panoramic view of the surrounding star systems. Holographic displays shimmered with real-time data from 1,000 worlds, their soft blue light casting an ethereal glow on the assembled alien diplomats. Commander Michael Thompson stood at the center of this grand chamber, leading humanity's first official delegation. He was a study in controlled power, 6 feet 2 inches of military precision, wrapped in a midnight blue diplomatic uniform. His short-cropped dark hair and piercing blue eyes conveyed a sense of calm that masked a lifetime of strategic training. To his left stood Dr. Elizabeth Rice, humanity's lead xenobiologist. Her olive skin and sharp features reflected her mixed heritage, a testament to humanity's diverse genetic tapestry. She carried a sophisticated datapad, its surface alive with complex scientific notations about the various alien species present. The delegation had spent months preparing for this moment. Years of careful study, diplomatic training, and technological preparation had led to this singular point of first contact. Humanity had been observing the Galactic Confederation from a distance, learning, analyzing, understanding the intricate political dance of interstellar diplomacy. Around them, the alien representatives represented species beyond human imagination. To the right, a delegation of silicon-based life forms from the crystalline nexus stood perfectly motionless, their translucent bodies refracting light in impossible geometric patterns. Near them, a gaseous entity from the Nebula Collective swirled in a contained environmental field, its consciousness flickering in complex communication patterns. The Krulthuri delegation occupied the most prominent position, a clear indication of their perceived importance in the Galactic Confederation. Their species was known for elaborate diplomatic rituals and a culture built on hierarchical displays of power. Towering at nearly 8 feet tall, they resembled bipedal insectoids with exoskeletons that shifted colors based on emotional states. Their lead diplomat, Ambassador Kreenel, was particularly notorious. His exoskeleton rippled with shades of deep crimson and aggressive purple, colors that translated to arrogance and contempt in Krulthuri body language. As the welcome ceremony began, holographic translators hummed to life. Each species heard the proceedings in their native communication format, some as sound, others as chemical signals, and some through direct neural transmission. The Confederation's chief mediator, a being of pure energy contained within an intricate mechanical framework, began the traditional greeting. Representatives of Earth, the being's voice resonated simultaneously in multiple frequencies. We welcome you to the greatest collaborative effort in galactic history. Commander Thompson stepped forward, his movements precise and measured. He carried with him a data crystal, a gift representing humanity's peaceful intentions. Encoded within were cultural records, scientific achievements, and a comprehensive overview of human history. What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the moment everything changed. Ambassador Kreenel's translator crackled to life. His words dripped with calculated contempt. "Look at these primitive beings," he sneered, barely out of their planetary cradle, thinking they deserve a place among advanced civilizations. The chamber fell silent. Every species present felt the sudden shift in atmospheric tension. Dr. Rice's hand subtly touched a communication device embedded in her sleeve. Microscopic sensors registered the diplomatic transgression, instantly transmitting detailed analysis back to Earth's diplomatic corps. Commander Thompson didn't move, not a muscle twitched. His blue eyes, previously warm and welcoming, transformed into something else entirely, something that made the silicon-based life forms unconsciously shift backward and caused the gaseous entity to compress itself into a tighter environmental field. In that moment, no one in the chamber understood the true nature of human patience. No one recognized that what appeared to be calm was actually something far more dangerous. The first spark of a galactic transformation had just been lit. The private chamber of the Galactic Consortium pulsed with tension. Holographic displays flickered with strategic maps, economic charts, and surveillance footage of human colonies. 5 powerful alien representatives sat around a circular table that seemed to float in midair, its surface a complex network of interstellar data streams. Administrator Vexera of the Mercantile Compact leaned forward, her tentacle-like appendages intertwining nervously. "The humans are an unknown variable," she stated, her translation device rendering her words with clinical precision. "They've been observing us for decades, gathering information, but never revealing the full extent of their capabilities." To her right, Overseer Krell of the Interstellar Resource Management Board tapped a series of holographic displays. Projected images showed human outer colonies, small settlements on harsh planetary environments, seemingly vulnerable and isolated. "Look at their expansion," he said. "Primitive infrastructure, limited defensive capabilities. They're ripe for strategic intervention." The youngest member of the group, Zara Lynn, a data analyst from the Quantum Intelligence Network, remained silent. Her neural implants processed information at speeds incomprehensible to most biological entities. Something about the human data profiles troubled her, patterns that didn't quite align with conventional predictive models. Deep within a classified facility on the obsidian moon of Nexus Prime, a different kind of preparation was underway. Jessica Rodriguez sat in a darkened monitoring room, surrounded by a constellation of holographic displays. Her fingers danced across quantum communication interfaces, piecing together a puzzle that most believed didn't exist. The attack patterns were too precise to be random. Small human colonies had experienced systematic disruptions over the past 6 months. Supply lines to the Kepler 442-bit settlement disappeared without a trace. Communication networks around the Proxima Centauri outpost experienced unexplained jamming. Trade routes to the Mars-based deep space research stations were mysteriously rerouted. Each incident was carefully masked. To the casual observer, these would appear as standard logistical challenges of deep space colonization. But Rodriguez saw the pattern. Someone was testing humanity's limits. In the consortium chamber, the discussion continued. Administrator Vexera pulled up a comprehensive economic projection. "If we can create strategic pressure points," she explained, "we can redirect human expansion. They're resource-hungry. Make those resources difficult to acquire, and we control their growth." Overseer Krell's holographic displays showed potential intervention points, subtle economic manipulations, strategic resource blockades, carefully constructed diplomatic pressures that would appear as normal interstellar bureaucratic friction. What they didn't know was that Jessica Rodriguez was watching. Every single detail. Her custom-built quantum analysis system, a marvel of human technological innovation, was tracking micro-patterns invisible to most species. She had developed algorithms that could predict complex interstellar economic behaviors with terrifying accuracy. On the surface of Mars, in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the red dust, a team of researchers worked in absolute secrecy. Led by Dr. Ryan Calloway, they were developing something far beyond conventional understanding. Calloway understood something the Galactic Consortium had not yet realized. Humanity's greatest strength was not its technology, but its ability to adapt, to learn, to transform challenge into opportunity. "They're creating a pressure map," Calloway muttered, studying Rodriguez's transmitted data. His fingers moved across holographic interfaces, revealing layers of strategic manipulation that most species would never comprehend. Back in the consortium chamber, the discussion reached its conclusion. A carefully orchestrated plan of economic and diplomatic pressure would be implemented. The goal was simple: contain human expansion without triggering direct conflict. Zara Lynn spoke for the first time, her voice a computational whisper. "There's an anomaly in the predictive models," she said. "The human response matrices don't align with our standard intervention protocols." The others dismissed her concern, but something in her neural networks recognized a pattern of potential that transcended conventional understanding. Outside the chamber, the vast machinery of interstellar politics began to move. Invisible threads of economic pressure started to tighten around human colonies. Supply lines would be disrupted. Communication networks would experience unexpected challenges. What the consortium didn't realize was that they were not observing the young species. They were waking the sleeping giant. The research facility beneath the Martian surface was a marvel of human engineering, invisible to orbital scans and protected by layers of technological camouflage. Deep underground, Dr. Ryan Calloway stood before a holographic display that pulsed with an intricate network of quantum algorithms, each line of code a potential weapon more sophisticated than any traditional armament. Around him, a team of the most brilliant minds humanity had ever assembled worked with a singular purpose. Dr. Marcus Wong, quantum computing specialist, manipulated holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. Dr. Aisha Patel, a neural network expert, ran simulations that pushed the boundaries of computational possibility. "We're not just developing technology," Calloway explained to a junior researcher, his voice calm but intense. "We're creating adaptive intelligence that can think beyond traditional computational frameworks." The facility was more than a research center. It was humanity's insurance policy. Each workstation represented a different approach to technological innovation. To the left, a team worked on quantum communication networks that could predict and reroute communication before interference could occur. To the right, neural-linked computing systems developed methods to analyze and counter complex alien communication protocols. Jessica Rodriguez entered the facility, her data analysis from the outer colonies projected across the main display. Red lines indicated disrupted supply routes. Blue networks showed communication jamming. Each point was a calculated attack, and each attack was now a learning opportunity. "Look at the pattern," Rodriguez said, highlighting a series of seemingly random disruptions. "They're not just blocking our routes, they're testing our response capabilities." Dr. Wong zoomed in on a particular communication disruption. "Fascinating," he muttered. "The jamming frequency uses a cascading quantum interference pattern. Most species would see this as random noise, but it's a deliberate probe." Calloway understood immediately. The alien consortium wasn't just trying to disrupt human colonies. They were gathering intelligence, testing humanity's technological and strategic limits. "We need something they can't predict," he announced to the team. The solution wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an adaptive intelligence system that could learn, predict, and counter threats in real time. Unlike rigid military AI, this system would be fluid, capable of complex decision-making that mimicked, and potentially exceeded, biological intelligence. Dr. Patel brought up a holographic model of the neural network they were developing. It wasn't a single system, but a distributed network of intelligent nodes that could communicate, learn, and adapt faster than any known computational system in the galaxy. "Traditional AI follows programmed parameters," Patel explained. "Our system doesn't just follow rules. It understands context, learns from each interaction, and develops strategic responses that are fundamentally unpredictable." In another section of the facility, a team worked on quantum communication technology that could transmit information faster than light, using entanglement principles that most species had only theorized about. These weren't just communication networks, they were potential gateways to understanding the fundamental fabric of spacetime. Rodriguez's latest data analysis revealed something troubling. The alien disruptions were becoming more frequent, more targeted. "They're escalating," she told Calloway. "Whatever they're planning, it's coming soon." The team worked with an intensity that bordered on obsession. 12-hour shifts were standard, with researchers rotating to maintain constant progress. Coffee machines ran continuously, and nutrient supplements kept the team functioning at peak capacity. Outside the facility, Mars looked peaceful. Red dust stretched to the horizon, hiding the most advanced research center in human history. Orbital satellites would detect nothing more than standard geological research operations. "We're not preparing for war," Calloway told his team during a strategy briefing. "We're preparing a response that will make war impossible." The final piece of their strategy was perhaps the most revolutionary. They weren't just developing defensive or offensive technologies. They were creating a comprehensive system that could predict, counter, and potentially neutralize threats before they fully materialized. As the team worked, something extraordinary was taking shape, a technological ecosystem that was more than the sum of its parts, an intelligence that could think, adapt, and respond with a speed and complexity that would fundamentally challenge everything the Galactic Consortium understood about warfare, diplomacy, and technological development. Humanity was no longer just preparing to defend itself. Humanity was preparing to redefine the rules of engagement. The moment arrived with surgical precision. Commander Michael Thompson sat in a command center that looked nothing like traditional military installations. Holographic interfaces surrounded him, each display a living network of quantum-entangled communication systems. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes stood to his right, her fingers dancing across neural interfaces that seemed to breathe with intelligence. "Initiate Protocol 009. Thompson commanded, his voice calm and measured. The first wave was invisible. Quantum communication networks began to pulse with a frequency that defied traditional understanding. It wasn't an attack in the conventional sense. It was a complete reconfiguration of interstellar communication infrastructures. Alien communication relays began to experience anomalies. At first, they were microscopic, tiny disruptions that seemed like standard electromagnetic interference. But these were no ordinary disruptions. Dr. Ryan Calloway's adaptive intelligence systems were working their magic. Each communication node became a point of potential infiltration, a gateway to understanding and dismantling the complex communication networks of the Galactic Consortium. In the Mercantile Compact's central communication hub, Administrator Vexera first noticed something was wrong. Her tentacle-like appendages moved frantically across communication interfaces that were becoming increasingly unresponsive. "Something is interfering with our networks," she muttered, her translation device betraying a hint of panic. What the consortium didn't understand was the true nature of human technological innovation. This wasn't a traditional cyber attack. It was a complete reimagining of communication warfare. Asteroid belts near critical alien infrastructure began to shift. Not dramatically, not obviously, but with a precision that suggested something far more intelligent was at work. Navigation systems across multiple star systems began to experience subtle course corrections that would take months to fully comprehend. Jessica Rodriguez coordinated from her advanced monitoring station. Each movement, each disruption was calculated with mathematical precision. Economic networks started to experience micro-fluctuations that would slowly but inevitably create massive systemic challenges. "They won't even understand what's happening until it's too late," Rodriguez said to her team, a slight smile crossing her face. The economic warfare was particularly ingenious. Quantum algorithms began to introduce microscopic inefficiencies in alien trading networks. These weren't crashes or obvious disruptions. They were subtle adjustments that would slowly erode the economic foundations of the consortium's most powerful members. On the outer human colonies, previously vulnerable settlements now stood as fortified bastions of unexpected technological superiority. Defense systems that looked simple from the outside concealed layers of adaptive intelligence that could respond to threats before they fully materialized. Dr. Marcus Wong watched the initial stages of the response with scientific detachment. "It's beautiful," he muttered, studying the cascading effects of their strategic intervention. "We're not destroying their infrastructure. We're fundamentally redesigning how it operates." The Galactic Confederation's communication networks began to experience a gradual, almost imperceptible transformation. Information started to flow through unexpected pathways. Communication relays that once seemed robust now appeared fragile and unpredictable. Commander Thompson reviewed the initial reports. Each display showed a different layer of their comprehensive response. Economic networks, communication systems, spatial infrastructure, each was being subtly but definitively redesigned. "This isn't about destruction," Thompson explained to Dr. Reyes. "This is about demonstrating that we control the game now." Within hours, the first reports began to surface across alien communication networks. Confused transmissions, conflicting data streams, economic projections that no longer made sense, navigation systems reporting unexplained course corrections. The truly terrifying part was the precision. This wasn't a blunt instrument of war. This was a surgical recalibration of interstellar systems. Administrator Vexera stared in growing horror at her communication interfaces. What had seemed like a simple plan to contain human expansion was turning into something far more complex. Humanity wasn't just responding. Humanity was rewriting the rules of engagement. And the galaxy was beginning to understand that it had gravely underestimated a young species with an unprecedented capacity for innovation. Information became the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever conceived. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes stood before a massive holographic display in the Strategic Communications Center, her fingers tracing intricate data patterns that pulsed with living intelligence. Behind her, a team of communication specialists, psychological analysts, and quantum information experts worked with a precision that bordered on the supernatural. "We're not just broadcasting information," she explained to a junior analyst. "We're creating a narrative that will fundamentally reshape galactic perception." The first wave of their psychological warfare was subtle. Carefully curated historical records began to surface across interstellar communication networks. These weren't fabrications, but meticulously documented accounts of the Galactic Consortium's previous interventions, economic manipulations, subtle colonization attempts, systematic marginalization of emerging species. Jessica Rodriguez managed the Information Warfare Division. Her team had spent years collecting, analyzing, and preparing this moment. Each piece of information was a precisely crafted weapon, a narrative fragment designed to undermine the consortium's carefully constructed image. Quantum communication networks became conduits of strategic storytelling. Information spread not like traditional propaganda, but like a living, adaptive system that could modify its message based on local reception and cultural context. On the communication hub of the crystalline nexus, senior information analysts began to notice anomalies. Historical records they had believed immutable began to show different perspectives. Diplomatic interactions from centuries past suddenly appeared in a dramatically different light. Administrator Vexera of the Mercantile Compact received the first comprehensive report. Her tentacle-like appendages trembled as she reviewed the data. These weren't simple accusations. These were meticulously documented accounts that challenged the very foundation of the consortium's narrative of galactic governance. "How is this possible?" she muttered, her translation device betraying a mix of confusion and growing panic. The human approach was brilliant in its complexity. They weren't just attacking the consortium's current infrastructure. They were dismantling its historical legitimacy. Dr. Marcus Wong had developed adaptive information algorithms that could predict and counter disinformation in real time. Each communication node became a dynamic intelligence that could modify its message based on local cultural and psychological contexts. "We're not fighting a war of weapons," Wong explained during a strategy briefing. "We're fighting a war of understanding." Across multiple star systems, communication networks began to experience a fundamental transformation. Information that once seemed static now appeared fluid, dynamic, challenging long-held beliefs about interstellar relationships. The Nebula Collective's communication networks were particularly vulnerable. Their consensual information systems, designed to create collective understanding, now became conduits for a narrative that challenged their entire philosophical approach to governance. Commander Michael Thompson oversaw the operation with calculated calm. Each information stream was a carefully placed chess piece designed to create maximum psychological impact with minimal direct confrontation. Zara Lin, the young data analyst from the Quantum Intelligence Network who had previously expressed concerns about human unpredictability, now found herself at the center of a massive information revelation. The data patterns emerging from human communication networks defied everything she had been taught about interstellar information warfare. "They're not just sharing information," she reported to her superiors. her neural implants working overtime to process the complexity. They're creating a living narrative that adapts and transforms with each transmission. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Alien species began to question long-held assumptions about their own history. Diplomatic relationships that had seemed stable for centuries now appeared fragile and constructed. Rodriguez's team had prepared for years. They understood something fundamental about information that most species had overlooked. Information is not static. It is a living, breathing entity that can be shaped, modified, and transformed. Holographic displays across the Human Strategic Communication Center showed real-time impact analyses. Each transmission created ripples of psychological and political disruption that spread faster than light itself. The Galactic Consortium had believed they could contain humanity by controlling resources and communication channels. They were wrong. Humanity had just demonstrated that the most powerful weapon is not a gun or a ship. The most powerful weapon is a story that can reshape reality itself. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation convened in absolute chaos. Holographic displays flickered with cascading data streams that made no sense. Communication networks that had existed for millennia now seemed like fragile constructs ready to collapse. Administrator Vexera's tentacle-like appendages moved frantically across communication interfaces, each gesture becoming more desperate. Commander Michael Thompson stood at the center of the massive conference chamber, a beacon of calm amid the surrounding panic. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes and Jessica Rodriguez flanked him, their presence as calculated as every other aspect of humanity's response. "You've misunderstood everything," Thompson began, his voice cutting through the babble of alien languages and panicked translations. The chamber fell silent. Zara Lynn, the young data analyst who had previously recognized humanity's potential, now sat among the senior delegates. Her neural implants processed information at speeds that made her practically vibrate with intensity. She understood something the other delegates had not yet comprehended. This was never about conventional conflict. Dr. Ryan Calloway had prepared for this moment for years. The adaptive intelligence systems they had developed were now revealing their true potential. Each communication network, each economic system, each diplomatic channel was being systematically restructured, not destroyed, but fundamentally reimagined. "Your attempts to contain us," Thompson continued, "reveal more about your own vulnerabilities than about humanity's potential." The holographic displays began to show a comprehensive breakdown of the consortium's manipulations. Economic interference with human colonies, strategic communication blockades, subtle attempts to limit human expansion. Each point was presented with surgical precision, backed by irrefutable evidence. Administrator Vexera attempted to interrupt. Her translation device crackled with a mixture of panic and incredulity. "We were simply managing." Thompson's response was cold. "You were attempting to control a species you fundamentally misunderstood." Dr. Marcus Wong had prepared the technological framework for this moment. The quantum communication networks they had developed weren't just defensive systems. They were living, adaptive intelligence networks that could predict, counter, and reshape informational landscapes faster than any known computational system. Across multiple star systems, alien infrastructure began to experience unprecedented transformations. Communication relays rerouted themselves. Economic networks discovered inefficiencies they had never recognized. Diplomatic channels that had seemed immutable now appeared flexible and dynamic. The truly terrifying aspect was the precision. This wasn't destruction. This was a comprehensive redesign of interstellar systems. Jessica Rodriguez managed the information warfare component with breathtaking skill. Each piece of revealed information was a precisely crafted weapon. Historical records, diplomatic communications, economic analysis. Everything was being recontextualized in a way that fundamentally challenged the consortium's narrative. "You believed we were a young species," Thompson said, his blue eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "You saw vulnerability. What you failed to recognize was potential." Zara Lynn's neural implants were working overtime. She began to see patterns that no other species had ever comprehended. The human approach wasn't linear. It was fractal, adaptive, capable of transforming itself in response to challenges in ways that defied conventional understanding. The Nebula Collective's representatives began to withdraw into themselves. Their consensual information systems were experiencing complete restructuring. What had once seemed like stable communication networks now appeared like complex, living organisms capable of rapid metamorphosis. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes stepped forward, presenting a comprehensive analysis of the consortium's historical interventions. Each slide was a precise deconstruction of their supposed diplomatic superiority, colonial manipulations, economic suppressions, systematic marginalization of emerging species. The evidence was irrefutable. "We are not asking for permission," Commander Thompson said, his final statement echoing through the chamber. "We are declaring our place in the galactic community." In that moment, everything changed. The alien delegates understood a fundamental truth. Humanity was no longer a species to be managed or controlled. Humanity had become a force to be respected. The aftermath of humanity's strategic intervention rippled across the galaxy like a quantum wave, transforming everything it touched. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes stood in the newly established Interstellar Diplomatic Center, a marvel of architectural and technological integration. The building itself was a statement, constructed from materials that could adapt to multiple environmental conditions, its very structure a metaphor for humanity's approach to galactic relations. Commander Michael Thompson reviewed the initial reports from various diplomatic missions. What had begun as a defensive response had evolved into something far more profound. Humanity wasn't conquering. They were fundamentally redesigning the approach to interstellar cooperation. Dr. Ryan Calloway's adaptive intelligence systems had become the new standard for communication networks across multiple species. What was once a rigid, hierarchical system of information exchange now became a dynamic, responsive ecosystem of shared knowledge. Jessica Rodriguez managed the transition with her characteristic precision. Her team had developed communication protocols that allowed for unprecedented levels of cultural and informational exchange. Species that had existed in isolation for millennia now found themselves part of a more interconnected galactic community. The crystalline nexus was the first to fully embrace the new paradigm. Their silicon-based consciousness found remarkable compatibility with human adaptive communication technologies. Where they once saw humanity as a threat, they now recognized a potential for growth beyond their previous limitations. Zara Lynn, now a key advisor in the Quantum Intelligence Network, worked on developing new frameworks for interspecies understanding. Her neural implants had been upgraded with technologies developed by Dr. Marcus Wong, creating a communication bridge that went beyond traditional linguistic barriers. On Earth, a new generation of diplomats and researchers prepared for a fundamentally different approach to interstellar relations. Universities developed comprehensive programs in adaptive communication, quantum diplomacy, and cross-species cultural integration. The economic systems underwent a complete transformation. The Mercantile Compact, once a rigid structure of economic control, now became a more fluid network of shared resources and collaborative development. Administrator Vexera found herself at the forefront of a new economic philosophy that prioritized mutual growth over competitive exploitation. Planetary colonies that had once been vulnerable now stood as beacons of innovative potential. Each settlement became a research center, a diplomatic outpost, and a living laboratory of interspecies cooperation. Dr. Wong's communication technologies allowed for unprecedented levels of cultural exchange. Translation was no longer about converting words, but about understanding contextual nuances, emotional subtext, and cultural complexities that had previously been lost in transmission. The Nebula Collective experienced the most profound transformation. Their consensus-based communication systems, previously rigid and slow, now became dynamic and responsive. They discovered a new way of collective thinking that embraced complexity and rapid adaptation. Commander Thompson oversaw the transition with a careful balance of diplomatic finesse and strategic vision. Humanity's approach was clear. They were not interested in domination. They were interested in evolution. Research facilities sprung up across human and allied territories. Each was a testament to a new approach to scientific and technological development. Collaborative research centers brought together species that had previously existed in complete isolation. Jessica Rodriguez's information warfare strategies evolved into a new field of cross-cultural communication. What had begun as a defensive mechanism became a proactive approach to understanding and bridging cultural differences. The galactic communication networks that Dr. Calloway had helped develop became living, breathing entities. Each network was an ecosystem of information, capable of adapting, learning, and growing in real time. Zara Lynn's work revealed something profound. The human approach to information and communication was fundamentally different from any known species. It wasn't about control or domination. It was about potential, about growth, about the continuous process of becoming. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes summarized it best during a landmark speech at the Interstellar Diplomatic Center. "We are not here to conquer," she explained. "We are here to understand. We are here to grow. We are here to create a future that no single species could imagine alone." The galaxy had changed, not through conflict, but through a fundamental reimagining of what was possible. Humanity had not conquered the stars. Humanity had invited the stars to dance. 10 years had passed since the moment that changed everything. Commander Michael Thompson stood on the observation deck of the Interstellar Diplomatic Hub, watching a diverse collection of species negotiate, collaborate, and dream together. The vast chamber was a testament to a new way of existing, a living, breathing ecosystem of interstellar cooperation. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes' approach, her steps measured and confident. The transformation they had initiated had reshaped not just galactic politics, but the very concept of interspecies interaction. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a decade of unprecedented change. The diplomatic hub was more than a meeting place. It was a physical manifestation of the new galactic paradigm. Architectural elements shifted and adapted, creating spaces that could accommodate the diverse physiological needs of hundreds of different species. Holographic interfaces translated not just languages, but entire cultural contexts, bridging gaps that had seemed insurmountable a decade ago. Jessica Rodriguez now led the Interstellar Communication and Cultural Integration Department. Her team had developed communication technologies that went beyond simple translation. They created empathy bridges, technologies that could help species with fundamentally different biochemistries and thought processes truly understand one another. Dr. Ryan Calloway's adaptive intelligence systems had become the backbone of galactic communication and research. What had begun as a defensive technology had evolved into a collaborative network that allowed for unprecedented levels of scientific and cultural exchange. Zara Lynn, once a junior analyst, now sat on the most important advisory board in the known galaxy. Her neural interfaces had been developed into a collaborative platform that allowed for multilayered communication beyond traditional linguistic barriers. The economic systems that had once been rigid and exploitative now operated on principles of mutual growth and shared potential. The Mercantile Compact, once a tool of oppression, had transformed into a cooperative network that prioritized sustainable development across species and planetary systems. On Earth, a new generation grew up with a fundamentally different understanding of their place in the universe. Schools taught adaptive thinking, cross-cultural communication, and a philosophy of collaborative potential. Children learned multiple alien languages as easily as their native tongue, with neural link educational technologies that made learning instantaneous and intuitive. Dr. Marcus Wong continued to push the boundaries of communication technology. His latest projects focused on developing empathy interfaces, technologies that could help species with fundamentally different biological and cognitive structures truly understand one another's experiences. The human colonies that had once been vulnerable outposts were now thriving centers of innovation. Each settlement was a unique ecosystem, combining human adaptability with technologies and insights from multiple alien species. Research centers, diplomatic outposts, and collaborative living spaces demonstrated a new approach to interstellar existence. Commander Thompson reflected on the journey. Their response had never been about conquest or dominance. It had been about potential, about showing that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the capacity to understand and grow. A diplomatic delegation from the crystalline nexus entered the observation deck, where once they would have been rigid and formal. Now they moved with a fluidity that suggested true understanding. Representative Call approached Thompson, their crystalline form shifting in patterns that conveyed complex emotional states. "We continue to learn from humanity." Catal communicated through a sophisticated neural link interface. "Your approach to existence continues to challenge and inspire." Dr. Ray smiled. This was the true victory. Not the strategic intervention that had shocked the galaxy, but the ongoing process of mutual understanding and growth. The Nebula Collective's representative joined the conversation, their gaseous form creating intricate communication patterns that danced with the holographic interfaces. What had once been an incomprehensible method of communication was now a rich, nuanced dialogue. As the sun set outside, casting a golden light across the diplomatic hub, Thompson understood the true meaning of their intervention. They hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had opened it up. They had shown that diversity was not a weakness to be managed, but a strength to be celebrated. Humanity had not just found its place among the stars. Humanity had invited the stars to find their place together.